Good morning. COVID-19 briefing around university life. The fourth in our series of COVID briefings begins now. The focus today is on the student experience this fall. I'm Robin Kaler, the Associate Chancellor for Public Affairs. I'll be the moderator today. Brief housekeeping note, the next one of these in the series will be Monday, June 29th at 11 a.m. The focus of that one will be on cleaning, building operations, and safety. It'll be at the same link that you're using today to watch this one. It also will be recorded, closed captioned, and posted on the covid19.illinois.edu website. We will email you when it's ready, when all of these are ready to be viewed, and we'll have markers in it to show you exactly where each question and answer begins so that you can go right to a specific question you have, or you can watch the whole thing. So again, that's all the housekeeping for today. Our panelists this morning are Chancellor Robert Jones, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Danita Brown-Young, and Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Sean Garrick. Our format today will be some opening comments by the Chancellor, then we'll have a brief presentation by the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, and then we'll be answering questions that members of the campus community have been asking us. So let's begin. Robert, would you like to offer some opening thoughts? Oh, and can you unmute yourself, please?
Of course. Good morning, and let me start by saying good morning to everyone. Thank you, Robin, and thanks to each of you for joining us today for this briefing. I'd like to offer a very special thanks to Vice Chancellor Garrick and Young for being here today. Danita and Sean are our co-chairs of our COVID-19 University Life Work Team that has been really very active and working very hard and thoughtfully as we move through the spring and the summer. Last week's announcement about our plans to return to in-person instruction in the fall was certainly one of the most anticipated ones of the summer. And now, as we've turned our focus to the work that needs to be done to prepare for a semester of hybrid online and in-person courses, the set of most frequently asked questions we're hearing are certainly centered on what university life will be like. And just as we know very well that the time spent in the classroom is a critical, but it's only a portion of the full residential experience. So questions about how these experiences will be offered, how they might be changed or adapted due to COVID-19 are really at the top of the mind of many people in our university community. And just as we've seen with so many of the COVID-19 issues, there is still a great uncertainty that we must face. So while we may not have all the answers today, I'm sure that Sean and Danita and the University Life team have been working very carefully and thoughtfully and thoroughly, and will be able to address some of the biggest and perhaps the most pressing questions that our community might have on their mind today during this session. And I know that they have a very long list of things to go through. So with that, I will turn it back over to Robin to get us started. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Robert. And before we move to the questions, Danita, could you please share your screen and then tell us a little bit about the planning that's already being done and some of the decisions that have already been made, and then we'll get into the questions.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chancellor Jones. Thank you, Robin. The Chancellor charged our outstanding, talented, brilliant, hardworking, and creative team members, which consist of students, faculty, and staff, with identifying pathways to safely return to the traditional elements of university life for our campus, for students, faculty, and staff. And those elements really included housing and dining, off-campus and community living, health and safety practices, co-curricular experiences and engagement, athletics, and student organizations and student support services. We work to identify the concerns of our students, faculty, and staff regarding to on-campus returning and going back into the classroom. And we also looked at the advantages and disadvantages of all of the methods of instructions that were presented to us. And as the Chancellor mentioned, now that that final decision has been made, we really are working towards putting some procedures and guidelines to those elements. So everybody wants to know what is going on with university housing. How can we make the best decisions in the interest and safety of our residents and our staff that align with our greater mission of the university and student affairs? And how do we keep our residents safe? So our creative team in housing really looked at some solutions of making sure that we offer an early drop-off of belongings for our residents prior to that traditional move-in period. We've extended the move-in period to de-densify on-campus foot traffic, so you won't see many people during that move-in period, just those identified residents during their time slot. We have de-densified our hall communities by offering a hybrid of double and single rooms, and we have increased single occupancy rooms as well for those individuals who feel more comfortable in those spaces. We have set aside 5% of that room inventory of all of our residence halls for isolation and quarantine purposes, and we can get into a little bit later about really what does that mean. Long gone are the days that we will have endless, limitless buffet style of dining. So we will be offering dining services via carryout on disposable with disposable products, and they are served by our trained dining services staff in their protective personal gear. We will also offer multiple hot or cold food options with multiple pickup locations across campus. Now, we will offer some limited dine-in seating, but it will be extremely limited in some of those dining halls. But we will continue the ever popular Inclusive Solutions program for those individuals who have special dietary needs. And as always, we are increased our cleaning of all of our housing in our dining halls to make sure that we are touching those high touch, high traffic areas to make sure that we are keeping people safe. So we really want to make sure that we are protecting and welcoming our residents in a very safe environment. When health is absent, wisdom cannot reveal itself, art cannot become manifest, strength cannot fight, wealth becomes useless, and intelligence cannot be applied. We cannot say that enough. We know that when we pivoted in the spring, the overall mental health and well-being of individuals suffered greatly. And we know that there is going to be some apprehension and anxiety as students and faculty and staff return to campus. So, and we also know that for our students to be successful, they also need to be healthy. We don't want our students just to survive. We really want them to thrive. And as our McKinley Health Center says, we want to keep you well to excel. So we'll be paying attention particularly to those overall goals of mental health. We will continue some of the telehealth appointments. We have mitigated our group therapy to an online format. We will continue to do daily mindfulness. We will make sure that we are keeping the safety in the mental health at the forefront as we deliver our services. For physical health, McKinley Health Center will continue to provide those physical health care needs and provide health care and health education to all of our students. With our fitness, with our campus recreation, people are eager to get back into their workout routine, but we will make sure that we do have equipment that will be, will have those barriers. It will be separated at least by 6 feet. And if we have some barriers, they'll be separated by 3 feet, but we will make sure that we have cleaning and sanitized equipment for use before and after the equipment. In the group classes, we'll be able to have up to 50 individuals as long as the social distancing is permitted. We know that there's food insecurity across our campus, but I'm happy to report that our students have worked very hard with not only Campus Recreation and the Eastern Illinois Food Bank and Wesley Foundation to open up a food pantry that will be located in the ARC coming this fall, and more information to come. When we're looking at the co-curricular and student services part, we want to make sure that we are providing that co-curricular experience, a quality experience for all of our students in making sure that we have these student services. So we are developing operational guidelines for all of the units that provide that direct service in terms of what are some of the operational needs that need to be taken into account. And we know that there are several units that specifically support our students that need a little bit more help and attention. So like our first generation or our low income students are historically marginalized groups. So we're making sure that we're taking care to track their experiences and to provide them with the necessary resources to address their disparities. As far as event management and for student organizations, we are working diligently to provide that operational guidance for those who plan events and programs, including, how do you go about space or food, or what are some of the expectations that we need to make sure that we are following to make sure that we have a quality experience. How we're doing that is looking at our 4 E's, and that's education, engagement, empowerment, and enforcement. So with the education, it is a must. We have a multi-pronged approach to returning to campus and making sure that everyone is engaged into the safe practices training modules, like how do you wash your hands properly? What are the proper ways to do social distancing? We will have peer public service announcements, and I'm very excited because the Illini Union Board and the Illinois Student Government and several of our cultural organizations really want to get involved in making sure that they are helping to educate their peers. We will have videos about how do you have these conversations with individuals. And of course, we already have some of the signage that's up on campus and in the surrounding community to remind people of our goals of keeping everybody safe. Engagement, again, it is about the community wellness. It's a community collective and responsibility of making sure that people are engaged in those safe practices like social distancing. It is a must that you wear your face mask or your face covering and go through those trainings, because again, we really want to make sure that we're keeping our community safe for our faculty, staff, and students, but also our guests that do come on campus. We're empowering individuals with that self-responsibility of promoting and modeling positive behavior and making sure, again, you're following those safe practices, even when you see other people who may not be following those safe practices. And enforcement, everybody wants to know about how are we going to enforce our students who may need a little help with social distancing, or if they're not wearing their mask, so to speak, or their face covering. So we have updated our student code, but keep in mind the expectations that we have for students, faculty, and staff will be the same, but the process may vary in terms of how we approach it. But we do want to engage in an educational approach where we're having conversations, and if it's a continued non-compliance issue, then those students would definitely go to the Office of Student Conflict Resolution and could face some different types of disciplinary action. As far as faculty and staff, I know our outstanding human resources team is working on guidelines and working with labor and employee relations about how do you have those conversations? What does that type of non-compliance discipline type look like? But again, we really want to start with this educational approach and to make sure that everybody is safe to keeping our environment healthy. So that's it. So thank you, Robin. Back over.
Thank you, Danita. That was a lot of information very quickly. Thank you very much. So let's go ahead and get started because we do have a long list of questions. And Robert, we'll start with you. Can you tell the student who says, it looks like most or all of my classes are going to be online, why should I come back? What's the point of the residential experience if my classes are mostly online?
Robin, as I said earlier, I really do believe, and it's been my experience that, as I said, an important part of the educational journey, the educational process for our students occurs outside of the classroom. The formal classroom is critically important, but a lot of the skills, a lot of the opportunities to engage with students from different countries, from different backgrounds and from different perspectives is lost without that opportunity to have some type of residential experience. We know that, yes, it's our duty to instruct students, but it's our duty to kind of shape their lives for the future. And it's very, very difficult for us to have the full impact of that if there's not a very thoughtful and engaged residential component of it. So that's why we say, regardless of whether you can take all of your classes online, the residential experience is by far, we think, superior. And it does prepare our students for life, to be members of civil society and to be better citizens. And so to me, it's just absolutely part of the hallmark of what constitutes an amazing degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
Great, makes perfect sense. Danita, you talked about this some in the briefing, but can you kind of walk us through again, what will the modified housing situation be, and what are the precautions you're implementing in housing to maximize the safety of the entire community?
Well, our university housing, number one, has a first-year live-on requirement, and therefore it provides space in the university housing and private certified housing. All of our housing locations, as I mentioned, will offer singles, doubles, and some suites. I forgot to mention that. But our doubles will make up the majority of the inventory, with some singles sprinkled throughout to help de-densify the 4 populations. But students who, do online learning in the fall away from campus, and who want to not maybe necessarily live on campus will need to provide documentation of that plan to the Housing Information Office for review if they want to live on campus, but they want to do more of the online learning. And our Housing Information Office will look at that plan. It's not an automatic process, and there's not an automatic approval. So the students would really need to contact the Housing Information Office to review their contracts if they wanted to be canceled without penalty. But we are making sure, again, that we are cleaning at our high touch areas and making sure that we are constantly educating our residents about social distancing and the face coverings and the masks.
That's great, thank you. Now, we've all got the picture of what move-in looks like in our heads. I know you and the chancellor both have helped many times get students moved in. I've moved a couple of kids in and out several times myself. You picture all the parents and the siblings and the friends and all that helping out, and people coming from all across the country and around the world. Can you talk a little bit about what we're doing to really maximize safety during that specific period?
Well, move-in will not be the same. It will not look like that, and will not, as you have already previously described. We will be limiting the number of individuals who can come with the resident to 2 guests. And the resident and the guest must wear their face coverings during move-in and follow the appropriate physical distancing guidelines. We've also expanded our drop-off time. So we will be providing 10 days of move-in drop-off times beginning at the of August for all of those residents who want to drop off their belongings within the buildings, and keeping in mind that the residents will not get their key at that time, but they will be able to at least drop off some of those belongings in an effort to reduce the amount of individuals within those buildings over the course of move-in. And the move-in experience has been extended to 7 days before the week of classes begin. And residents will have to sign up for a move-in time. So that will be to help limit the number of individuals who will be in the building and on the floors.
Great. So Sean, compliance obviously is going to be really important. Danita mentioned, people are going to need to wear their masks and social distance and all that sort of thing as they're moving in. But it's going to be important the whole semester. How do you go about creating a culture of looking out for one another's safety?
It's really important that we do that. I think as Danita mentioned earlier, I think it's really about education and empowerment, two of the four E's. She mentioned in the context of move-in, but generally it's important for everyone to know how to live, work, and play on campus, and to do that in community to get, again, the beneficial experience of the residential life that we're offering. So it will involve a variety of education interventions to make sure that when you arrive on campus on the first day, in whichever context, faculty, students, staff, you know what is expected of you. Empowerment really means that each person knows that our collective safety really is in each other's hands, and that you're empowered to do so. For example, we think of face coverings, whether it's a mask or a shield or something, but it's important to know, it's important for us to know what those things can and cannot do. The purpose of the face covering is really to protect other people, right? It's such that when you sneeze or when you cough, whether it comes out of your mouth or your nose does not go very far. It protects not you, but the person standing next to you or the person walking behind you. So it's those sorts of things that we need to emphasize, again, to make sure that everyone truly knows that we are safe with each other and in each other's hands.
Absolutely. And Danita, there's nothing more convivial and communal than eating together. And you mentioned there'll be a little bit of an opportunity for students to be in the dining hall and have their meals. Can you talk a little bit about how that'll work? How many students can be there and what will the configuration be?
Well, as I mentioned, most of the dining halls, all of the dining halls will be providing that carry-out option. We will have a limited number of spaces available for those who do want to dine in, but it will all work in accordance with the CDC, the Public Health Department, and our licensed environmental health practitioner guidelines. So there will be a limited number of individuals who can be in those dining halls at one time, and that capacity will be listed once you enter into the halls. There will also be a limited number of satellite serving locations for individuals where students can pick up their box meals outside of traditional dining halls in those times. But we have extended those dining hall hours to allow for greater social distancing and to be flexible around the new class schedule. And our retail locations will also make sure that people are social distancing and following those guidelines.
Great. And what about fraternities and sororities? Will they be open, and private certified housing?
Well, our fraternity and our sorority houses, they are all self-governed organizations that are owned and operated independent of the university. So we don't own and independent operate those. But it is anticipated that most will open with some level of operation and compliance, again, with those safety guidelines outlined by the CDC and the health department. All registered student organizations will be provided those safety guidelines so that we are, working with them, our university staff, our housing staff, our fraternity and sorority affairs staff are working with our fraternities and sororities to make sure that they are in compliance and following those guidelines. Now, there are a variety of living options with our private certified housing that are similar to the university housing area. And so they will work very closely and collectively with our university housing guidelines to follow those appropriate protocols and safety measures for students.
And for fraternities and sororities, will there be rush this year, or how does that work?
I believe that they are working on some safe protocols. I know for our Panhellenic organizations, they have a safe protocol that is in place. So I would guess and bet, yes, we will definitely have a robust recruitment period for our fraternities and our sororities.
Recruitment, right? Sorry, I said the wrong word.
That's okay.
I'm old school. So some freshmen, I know some parents have talked about wanting their children to live off campus for safety reasons. how can freshmen live off campus, and how are you working with private landlords on and off campus?
Hmm. Well, there again are approved exemptions to the live on requirement. So if a student is commuting from home within a 40-mile radius or has medical accommodations, our students can go to our university housing website to learn more about what those guidelines are and expectations for the approval process, and then fill out the freshman waiver request form, and it will be sent to our housing information office, and they will make the necessary approval. But again, it's for students who require an accommodation for safety issues, or if they are recruiting or traveling from home, commuting from home.
Got it. Great. And landlords, you do work with them, and I mean, you don't control them, obviously.
No, we don't control them, but we do work very closely with them with our off-campus and community living office through the Office of the Dean of Students. We are preparing a number of Zoom kind of conversations and webinars and trainings, if you will, to help them understand, the guidelines and making sure that they are keeping our students and their residents safe as well. So we work hand in hand about what does the PPE look like, what does social distancing look like, making sure that they have their face coverings and face masks, because all students, whether they live on campus or off campus, will receive 2 face coverings or masks from the university.
And I have seen those. They look very cool.
They're very nice.
Spoiler alert, they have very cool Illini branding on them. So that's awesome.
Whoever created them was the genius.
Yeah. So how will the university handle then students who don't take advantage of those things you're supplying to them and don't follow the safety guides?
Yeah, so that goes back to that enforcement piece. And again, we are an educational institution, and the primary goal of any type of disciplinary process that we may put in place is to be educational and to help students learn from their mistakes. It's really about that approach of upholding the individual behavioral expectations for the university and with their own conduct. So we do have some updates to our procedures set forth by the student code. And we will make sure that we are, again, having those conversations. We will bring them into our offices. But again, if there's non-compliance, if it's a repeat offense, it may, land into some higher level of sanctioning for that student.
I do feel that these days, I know when I leave my home, I feel like it's a privilege, and I want to be really careful to protect that privilege. And I think that's a nice way to think about it.
Yes.
Yeah. So Sean, social distancing and face coverings make it difficult for people who have hearing impairments to be able to follow along. And obviously when you're doing in-person classroom lectures and whatnot, that could really create a gap for a student with any kind of a hearing impairment. How will we be addressing that and making accommodations or arrangements so those students are able to participate fully?
Sure. It's really about, the same sort of accessibility that we made available to all students pre-COVID-19, ensuring that we do the same in this new context. Technology Services is working with Facilities and Services to assess the infrastructure needs for every room that's been identified for instruction so far, to make sure, for example, that there's the ability to do lecture capture, to do live Zoom meetings and such. We're also looking at technology solutions such as classrooms in a box, with the intention of offering the equipment to instructors, TAs, professors, and so on for quick implementation. We don't want this to be something that's rather difficult for folks to use, as the lower the hurdle, the better. The other thing is to really get a sense of the inventory of spaces that we have to use for instruction. So we have teams across campus working to gain an understanding of all the spaces, traditional and non-traditional, that would need accommodation, and also some of the more traditional spaces that still have technology needs. Small classrooms that, for example, can't accommodate in-person classes with social distancing. You can probably do things like recordings or studio spaces, again, for live capture and recording. The other thing is about the face covering, whether it's a shield or a mask, right? You have to make sure that in the context of a hearing impairment, the student or the person is able to, let's say, read lips. So in that case, we'd be making clear shields available for all instructors, for all speakers, as an adjunct in terms of communication. And these shields are going to be available through central stores. Also, there's a consulting team in facilities and services that is going to be, again, looking at all of our classroom experiences, all of our instructional experiences to make sure that all the shields are available to every instructor. So we're trying to think about this from a holistic sense, both what we've done in spring as a rapid response, as well as, again, our commitment to equity and institutional equity by accessibility. I think you're muted.
Right, still muted. Little clicker is not working for me today. Thank you. I'd heard, I think yesterday, that they're ordering another, batch of computers and Wi-Fi hotspots and things like that. So whether it's hearing impairment or some other accessibility issue, you've got plans in place for those as well.
Correct. We want to make sure that, again, our commitment to making our high quality education available to all is valid in this new context, which really means making sure that we have all the technology bases covered. We have enough of a, let's say, consultancy mindset to see when problems arise and really before they arise, given that we look at the variety of courses that need to be offered, the different types of instructional experiences, and also the scheduling of those.
Great, thank you. And I know Chancellor Jones was on last week with the SHIELD team, and they gave a really great presentation on all of the work being done to make sure that we've got a very robust testing and tracing and informational campaign. But that doesn't mean nobody's ever going to test positive, right? So what will you do, Sean, for students who need to quarantine and maybe don't have a place to go? And then we'll have Danita talk about what will be done with quarantining in the residence halls.
First, let's say that, for all students and for all staff, as a matter of fact, we follow the guidance of the Champaign-Urbana Public Health Department, right? So we're not doing this on our own. We're following local guidance. I know that university is housing roughly 5% of its inventory for isolation floors and quarantine floors for residents. And procedures have been developed in collaboration with McKinley Health Center for the intake of residents who require to be isolated or in quarantine. And during that isolation period, it will be contactless, i.e. no virtual and contactless, such that we minimize spread and ensure the health and safety of all on campus. For example, with intake and meal delivery. And given that we are, a significant number of our students are from Illinois, we imagine that they will be able to go home for recovery if it's appropriate. Meaning if, again, the travel is easy or convenient, let's say, if it's appropriate, I'll just leave it at that. There are too many varieties that could lead to that. And again, all of us, faculty, staff, students, in this case, off-campus students, they also need to follow the guidance of Champaign-Urbana Public Health District. So we believe that we have a fairly robust way of keeping folks, if and when transmission does occur, to minimize contact with the rest of the population.
Great, thank you. And Danita, can you talk a little bit more about the residence hall setup for that?
Yeah, we work, as Sean had mentioned, we work in conjunction not only with the Champaign-Urbana Public Health Department, but McKinley Health to do some assessments. Our residents who happen to end up in that isolation or that quarantine will have care given to them virtually. We will make sure that they have the necessary resources or medicine. It will all be delivered contactless. As far as the off-campus students, if a student gets sick and then is in their apartment and they have roommates, We will work with not only McKinley Health, but we will work with the Champaign Health Department to help them finding some adequate quarantine space. I know that our Champaign-Urbana Public Health Department has some partnerships with local hotels and other spaces around the community that will assist that student in isolation and quarantine. Typically, if we've had these type of illnesses before, most students do like to just go home. So they could obviously have that option to go home, whether they're living on campus or off campus, to do their isolation and their quarantining.
Okay, thank you. And Sean, what will the rules be for common spaces? For example, can students just hang out at the Atlanta Union, the libraries, Greenwich Lobby, Eikenberry Commons, any of those places where you normally see large gatherings of people just hanging about?
Yeah, again, we want to make it abundantly clear for everyone on campus how they should, how they should be, how they should live, work, study, play. So facility and services, as well as various units, will be making sure that furniture in all the spaces are arranged to accommodate social distancing. Areas will be clearly marked for appropriate spacing and also for pedestrian flow, i.e. to minimize contact with others.
Okay, and Danita, I forgot to ask one thing when we were still talking about those who've tested positive. What will be the policy on absences and accommodations? So if I've been tested positive and my excused from class, will I be able to participate remotely? How does all that work?
Yes, so the authority to excuse absences continues to rest with our course instructor. So I want to be clear about that. So our students should get in touch with their instructor if they have an illness that prevents them from attending class for a period of time. But also the Student Assistance Center can provide those absence letters for students upon the student and the faculty request. That is in accordance with the criteria that's already outlined in our student code. But the important piece of that is the communication. We really want to make sure that students are communicating with their faculty members, their instructors, and we're really encouraging our faculty members to be flexible in accommodating students who may be incapacitated for a period of time as a result of an extended illness or COVID-19. And going back to even when you're talking about the technology program, we do have a joint collaboration program with Technology Services, Student Affairs, the Provost Office that will allow for some laptops, like we mentioned, some internet access hotspots, what have you, that started in the spring when we did pivot to the online courses. And we're hopefully looking to expand that program. But if a student did come across and they would need some of those technology services while they are recovering from any illness, we would be able to assist them.
Great, thank you. And this next question is probably for both of you, Danita and Sean. Will there be extra counseling and support services available to help students adjust no matter who they are and where they are? I'm not sure who wants to go first on that one.
I'll go first and just say absolutely yes, right? Before we describe that, the answer is absolutely yes. I think the experience of the spring semester when we had to rapidly adapt and get folks off campus and into the remote context really has taught us the importance of being able to offer these services. And we had very little time to do so. We've spent a fair amount of the spring semester and summer preparing for the safest way to provide these services that are absolutely crucial to our students. This includes making counseling and medical services available via telehealth and telecounseling, and adjusting the physical environment to promote social distancing and allow the use of personal protective equipment. I know that units across Student Affairs have been preparing to offer the same quality services to students while promoting an environment of safety and reduced risk.
Yeah, and I would just definitely add, none of our services stopped supporting students, whether that was the counseling or career services or OMSA or what have you. In fact, I think we ratcheted up the services and support because we realized the mental health of our students was suffering. So as Sean has already mentioned, we have adapted some of the outreach and prevention methods and program delivery. We are making sure that we do some daily mindfulness activities for students, making sure that we are staying more in contact with our students and our peers, encouraging peers too to have these conversations with their own peers if they're starting to feel anxious or depressed or stressed out, and to ratchet up the conversations that we have with our advisors and faculty members, and making sure that they have the necessary resources to refer our students to if they are in a time of need. But again, our counseling center staff and our McKinley mental health team, they really have been ratcheting up and going above and beyond to reach our students to make sure that their mental health is taken care of.
And in addition to mental health, safety is another big issue, obviously, right now. And we've talked about expanding the course offering times into evenings and maybe weekends, whatever. How will that impact things like the bus schedule and safe walks and things like that?
Okay. Well, absolutely. Our MTD will work with the campus to adjust bus schedules where appropriate. We know that we have a MTD service advisory committee that has already been established. It's been working for a number of years to really address these mass transit needs for our campus. And our students and staff and faculty who are part of that committee meet with those MTD representatives on a monthly basis to ensure that we have adequate, effective service for our campus. So I know that committee is working with MTD right now to really look at what is that fall semester going to be, and then make some recommendations to service where appropriate. I know people are worried and concerned about maybe even some public safety issues that might occur in the evening because we will have more students that will be out. And so the Provost's office, along with Student Affairs and others, are working with public safety to assess the appropriate level of campus security on campus, in the buildings and throughout campus. And as always, our public safety will provide the same level, if not more, service that they have always provided to try to accommodate any changes in patterns that we do see on campus. So they may increase their staffing levels based off of the trends that they do see. They already have a number of security guards that work evening hours. So they may increase that to provide an extra set of eyes and ears around campus. We do have the student patrol and safe walk programs available to our students and anybody here on campus if they feel unsafe at night going to the bus or going to their car. So we would encourage everyone to not only utilize the MTD service, but also any type of safe ride program or the safe walk program.
Thank you very much. And Sean, we've talked about this before, but I'd kind of like to have it all in one response. You know, we know a lot of the instruction is going to be online, even for students who are physically located in Champaign-Urbana. How are we going to support those students who face financial or academic or just personal challenges that are just exacerbated by remote instruction?
Yeah, I think Danita touched on this earlier. We have a technology loan program in place for students and staff that was created as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, with the idea of being able to bridge that gap to make sure that everyone has access to our high quality education. The program is still operating in collaboration with the Student Assistance Center and Tech Services, and it can provide both hardware equipment as well as internet access. But I would say in addition to these programs, it's really important that students feel empowered to raise these concerns before, they become critical. Meaning, if you feel that you're not progressing because of something that may be alleviated by either technology, hardware, software, and so on. Bring this to the attention of your advisor, someone in student affairs, someone in your academic unit, because we know that much of what will happen on the fly. So we want to make sure that we have enough time to be responsive to everyone's needs.
Great, thank you. And, obviously, as the chancellor said earlier a couple of times, a lot of the residential experience happens outside of the classroom. So let's kind of walk through a little bit of the semester and see how that's going to be different. So Danita, Welcome Week is a huge thing at this university. Quad Day, oh my goodness. What is Welcome Week programming going to look like this year?
Well, we're hoping that we will keep the same type of structure so that we can transition our new family members, if you will, to the university. So we are reviewing those various events like Quad Day, which is so popular and that happens traditionally during Welcome Week. So we are planning some outside events, but of course, we have to make sure that we are keeping people safe before they can occur. Other events will occur virtually, but at all possibilities, we would love to have face-to-face Welcome Week programming. We still plan to do the new student convocation to welcome our students. It may look a little different than in the past, but the important thing is to make sure that our new students and even our students who are returning, that they feel connected, that they are being supportive of one another, building their networks, building their friendships, looking at our academic units and understanding the type of support that they will have, meeting faculty members, meeting their advisors. That's very important to the success of our students. And so we are going to have as much face-to-face as it allows within the guidelines of the Restore Illinois program and the CDC program, because we do know that is important.
Yeah, it sounds like the job of the RA just got even more important than it already was.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about student programming throughout the semester. So we have well over 1,000 registered student organizations. How will we monitor their gatherings and make sure that they're staying safe?
So Student Affairs is currently working on all the fall programming initiatives to make sure that adjustments are made that will comply with the safety guidelines as provided by the CDC, Champaign-Urbana Public Health, and Illinois Department of Public Health. For in-person programs, we will make sure that we comply with social distancing rules. So whether that's 6 foot distance or the maximum number of persons per room and so on. And we'll also be requiring all participants to wear a face covering. Again, a mask, a shield, whatever it may be. When unable to offer the in-person programming, we're going to try to do as many things online as possible while replicating the spirit and the feel of the event. It's also important to know that while registered student organizations are independent of the university, they still have the same expectations when making use of university resources, whether it's space, events, funding, and so on, with the idea, again, of where we started the conversation about ensuring everyone's health and safety. Again, it's really a collective thing. We're also making sure that university staff will work with these RSOs to plan their events to make sure that they're in compliance with all the guidelines. While we want everyone to do this perfectly, we know that won't happen on day one. So again, it's really about that interactive education experience to make sure that we work towards a better health and safety experience.
Thank you. Danita, anything to add to that?
I was just going to say, it really goes back to the 4 E's and making sure that we are training our RSOs, that we are providing the necessary guidelines via video, in written form, so that they clearly know the expectations that we do have for them if they decide to host a program that is on campus, because that is an integral part of student experience, is making sure that they can be involved and engaged and connected. We want them to be involved so that they can grow, that they can challenge one another, they can learn these leadership skills, they can learn making skills, that they're working in a very diverse background and environment with individuals. So we really want to have as many programs available to them as possible. But of course, again, we have to follow those safety guidelines that are set forth by Restore Illinois. And as I mentioned before, none of our units across campus stopped their programming either during our pivot in the spring. So those units will continue to offer programs virtually, again, because we want to reach as many people as possible and we want to keep them safe. So I would anticipate that programming is still going to be strong on this campus.
That sounds great. And you had mentioned earlier a little bit about the fitness centers on campus. So the ARC and CERSI, they will be open. Talk a little bit about the policies that are in place to make sure that people can work out safely, because I know that's a really important thing to a lot of our students.
A lot of our students and our faculty and staff who utilize those spaces here on campus. So yes, I know our campus recreation team have been chomping at the bit to get back into the swing of things as well. And so we do plan to reopen in the fall. The hours, the activities, and the facilities will be open contingent on a number of factors, because we may be utilizing some of those spaces for instructional purposes, for academic purposes and classrooms. So that may impact the schedule that we have in those spaces. But overall, we want to make sure that we are emphasizing the cleaning and the sanitation of those high touch areas. We have removed or closed some of the machines and limiting some of those activities to make sure that we are complying with social distancing guidelines. We have limited the activities and programs to comply with those safety rules and to make sure that we have 50 or fewer individuals in those spaces, making sure that we are looking at the HVAC and the air filtration systems, making sure that we are cleaning the locker rooms at least once every hour, if not more. But we really want to keep people safe and clean and healthy throughout their workout experience. And there will be a number of guidelines and expectations that will be posted visibly for individuals to see as they are able.
Great, thank you. And I know Josh Whitman and his staff are working diligently on Big Ten sports, and they're actually going to help us with a briefing in July. But Danita, can you tell us a little bit about intramural and club sports? Will those still be happening?
You know, I'm a sports person, so I'm eager to see some football. I'm eager to see rugby. I'm eager to see it all. So we will be able to offer some of the intramural and the club sports contingent upon the nature of the activity and it's the ability to adhere some to the standards that I had talked about previously. But we do expect to see some intramurals and club sports happening this fall. And then there may be some times where that club sport or activity will not be able to happen, at least for this fall term.
Yeah, safety first, though, as Chancellor has said many times, #1 priority, and Provost both have said it.
Yes.
So this question was not on the list that was submitted to us, but I'm just curious, all three of you, what have you learned through this pandemic that might change the way that you operate your organization or any of the processes or things? I mean, have you gotten any tips that better ways to do things that we might want to keep doing later on? I know, for example, in public affairs, we've kind of found some gaps in communications processes, and we've realized ways to sort of plug those holes and strengthen our communications network. So I'm guessing you guys have found things too.
I would say absolutely. I think for our, and particularly speaking about student affairs team, I think our communication skills have increased. I think we have created even more text groups, and we've had late night meetings or conversations. It's actually brought us closer to understanding ourselves as individuals, as personal issues come up in our lives, that we support one another. If somebody is having an issue and can't necessarily meet a deadline or a timeline or needs some help, I've seen our team just step in and support one another. So I've been very proud of the way that our team members have handled this. We know that there has been lots of mental health fatigue, particularly around all of the Zoom meetings, because we're in meetings from morning to sundown, and people need information and they need it quickly. But I think our team has come together to support one another and to support our students, particularly in their needs. So I've been excited about what the lessons have taught us about making sure that we are communicating in a timely manner and that we are communicating effectively across the board.
Great. Thank you very much. Sean, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think what I've learned is somewhat, it's not communications, but it's communications related. Danita touched on, the wonders, the beauty of Zoom. One of the nice things about it is that, everyone gets to speak, and it forces you to wait your turn and hear what someone else is saying. And that made me, or helped me realize that in some of our face-to-face activities, maybe that wasn't happening, right? Because you have folks who are more comfortable speaking, you have folks who may wait for a bit more silence and so on. So in a way, it's kind of helped me to be a bit more responsive to the needs of inclusivity in terms of really paying attention to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to contribute. So I think one thing we can do, my office in particular, is number one, facilitate a bit more conversation and be a bit more directed about how we engage in conversation, who we invite, and make sure that we actually truly hear one another. It's weird, right? You have these 9, 10 different little boxes on your screen and you wait for each one. And that seems a little artificial, but it really points to something that's really, really fundamentally important. And that is making sure that there's a space for everyone to contribute. And that's part of the great thing about this university, it's diversity. So we have to make sure that we take advantage of that.
What a lovely way to wrap up. That was great. Thank you. Chancellor Jones, any final remarks for us today? Oh, and don't forget to unmute.
Yeah, it's hard. I get so caught up in the conversation and the dialogue from my outstanding leaders that I forget about mute buttons. That's kind of, sorry, that happens quite a bit. But let me just say, to answer your last question, I think the thing that this whole crisis has taught me, it really is kind of antithetical to what a lot of people perceive about a great university, that we're large, we are huge, and we can't turn on a dime. Well, we may not be able to turn on a dime, but we can turn on a nickel or 25 cents or whatever the appropriate denomination is. We have really demonstrated the ability to respond very thoughtfully and very strategically, and we've demonstrated our ability to manage effectively through a crisis. And I can tell you that's been an important lesson for all of us, and I think an important lesson for those that lead our state, lead our city and county governments and the nation, that universities and land-grant universities and the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign is nimble, and we are strategic, and we have the ability to really address the needs of the day, of the hour, or the moment. And so I just wanted to disclose and say thanks again to Danita and Sean for leading this University Live work team. And I think you have a good sense of now why it required 2 co-chairs and why it's the largest of all of our work teams, because clearly the work that they have set out to do really has caused us, as we are doing for all across this university, rethink almost every aspect of university life. And to emphasize again, university life is not just the student life, it's the faculty and staff components as well. That is what constitutes community. That is what makes this university a great place to work, to study, to learn. And so this is an awesome set of responsibility these 2 dynamic leaders and their teams have undertaken. And I couldn't be more proud of the work that they've done thus far, and I look forward to the work that they would do to implement these great strategies. And I believe that once we come back to face-to-face instruction, once we come back together as a community, we will see that we have not lost a lot from the old version of what we perceive to be community, and that there's a lot of innovation and not a lot of opportunity for us to expand our community, particularly in the context of which we keep saying, keeping yourself safe and therefore keeping others safe. That's absolutely at the core of what we're trying to do here. So thank you all so much for being with us. And we look forward to continuing to keep you updated as we move forward to returning to fall operations in August. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, Chancellor Jones. Thanks to all of our panelists. And I have been really negligent in thanking the folks behind the scenes on these before. Big thanks to Drew McGregor and Martin Lamping, who got us all going on our technology early on. And now to Rick Lindquist and Scott Van Wingerden, who've been super helpful. Allison Vance, Chris Harris, Brian Mertz, and August Chess have been producing all of these, and they're doing a wonderful job. So thanks to all of you guys behind the scenes. We appreciate it. Again, our next briefing in the series will be Wednesday, June 29th at 11 a.m. The focus will be on cleaning, building operations, and safety. It will be as good as this one was today, so tune in. Again, same link. All the briefings will be recorded and posted to the covid19.illinois.edu website, so please join us. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.